Hello everyone, this is Nandini Ray and you are listening to the Maitri Podcast Between Friends Conversations with Maitri. We are dedicating this episode to commemorate Women's History Month. As you know, Women's History Month has been celebrated in the United States in the month of March since 1987. And it is a celebration of women's often overlooked contributions to history, culture, and society. So we thought to celebrate Women's History Month, what could be more appropriate discussing women's status in today's world with some women from our community. I wish I could invite at least 1,000 women to this podcast episode, but realistically it is not possible. So I'm randomly selecting 4 Maitri volunteers and asking them 3 basic questions to understand what they think of women's status in today's world. But I'm hoping that more than 1,000 women will listen to this episode and they will continue this discussion in their own networks with other women and men. So my first guest is Meetha Gupta. Tell us about yourself and what is the one thing that you are proud of for being a woman?
I'm an engineer and I work in the semiconductor tech industry, which essentially builds silicon chips for anywhere from consumer devices like phones to complex devices, machines. My husband and I moved to the Bay Area in the 90s, mid 90s actually, and we have 2 boys. So I have been a volunteer with Maitri, in fact, a certified peer counselor for about 10 years now. Maitri pairs me with clients experiencing domestic violence to help them rebuild their lives. I help them acquire or update skills for a workplace, find jobs, find childcare for their little ones. At times, I've even helped them get driving lessons and buy a car, and even accompanying them to court for some of their legal issues. But more importantly, I give them a shoulder, a hand, and ears when they're really overwhelmed with their journey. I would say that being a woman has made it possible for me to give birth to my children. And I often try to remind myself that gender is primarily a biological aspect, but in many physical, intellectual, and even emotional aspects, I see myself as a human first and a woman after that.
Okay. Uh, Tell us any discrimination that you have faced because of your gender.
So I grew up at a time in India when women were, increasingly becoming aware that their economic independence was very crucial to have control over their own lives. And in fact, a professional career was actually a path to it. So while I was fortunate to have access to this path, I was constantly surrounded by gender stereotypes, pointing out what a career would make possible for me and what it would not, where I would be constantly facing uh, trade offs that I could do some things, but I could not do something else. Or I couldn't just step out of my home in the middle of any time of the day or night, even though I could bike or drive a car, or if I needed to travel for business. So I had to go through this, very social code of conformity and acceptable professions that did not challenge the role of a woman as a homemaker first and everything else afterwards. So interestingly, marrying a person from Northeast India offered me a very unique glimpse of this and helped me to see many stereotypes in a different light. Women in Northeast have a more assertive role in their communities and homes, and they actively pursue a lot of different professions like the legal profession and even the political roles and even farming and academic jobs. And this actually helped me to see a bridge between my own upbringing and what was possible for me to take further on in life. And as an engineer in the semiconductor industry, I often find that I'm the only woman in a room full of decision makers. The discrimination is subtle but intact in a lot of different ways. For example, a woman's expertise and judgment is frequently measured relative to someone else's and not always acknowledged in its own right. And she is rarely seen as the go-to person for important decisions or someone who can take risks in a business. We recently started seeing a corporate push to narrow the gender gap, but I feel that the outcomes continue to be modest.
Are you happy seeing women's status in today's society? What kind of changes do you want to see and how to bring that change?
So, to my mind, there is a huge disparity in women's rights. On one side, we have women in very highly socially evolved communities where they're building vaccines, traveling to space, becoming world leaders, and so on. And on the other side, there are women being abducted by terrorists and being denied basic human rights. To me, it seems like the biggest roadblock for women today is sexual violence and even domestic violence on that same platform. The fear and trauma it perpetuates prevents women from experiencing a very equitable status in their communities. And for this, I feel that a movement similar to the Me Too movement to empower women and girls around the world to step outside their homes and their familiar spaces more frequently would actually create a more equitable space for them. Instead of succumbing to fear and holding themselves back, I think we need to find ways to help them build their confidence in really large numbers, almost like a people's movement across the globe, just like the Me Too movement was. And to help them to, go out to new places alone and unsupervised. So while, a lot of courts and police are doing their own job in trying to make these places safe for women, what we need to help women do is empower them to take control of their own safety by taking up, even simple and big life tasks, stuff like negotiating their own rental leases for homes that they will live in, or even mortgages, or buying their own car or a bike, or even a laptop or a smartphone without having to lean on a male member at home and taking it to a repair shop themselves. So it seems to me that we have to be able to encourage women to go to more of these unconventional places and make it more normal for women to be seen in the same places that men have traditionally been seen at. A lot of times when we volunteer as Maitri volunteers, we help many of our clients figure some of these things out themselves. We help them to file their own taxes and going to a bank and opening a bank account themselves, stepping out of a shelter and being able to navigate the world on their own. The more they step out of their homes and do these themselves, that I feel that they will be more safer and will feel more confident about navigating their own lives themselves. To my mind, when we empower women to be emotionally self-sufficient individually and resilient collectively, I do believe it will bring change.
Thank you, Meetha. That was Meetha Gupta Bhadri. Thank you for sharing your opinion with us. And now I am moving to my another guest, and that is Trisha Anand. Tell us about yourself and what is the one thing that you are proud of for being a woman?
So my name is Trisha Anand. I grew up in North India. I did my engineering in the East in Jharkhand. I worked in the South in Bangalore. I did then my MBA and PhD in the West from IIM Ahmedabad. And then after mapping all four corners of the country, I moved to the United States by virtue of marriage. My background is in the digital mental health field. A few years ago, I built an online community for emotional support givers and seekers as the head of operations for a mental health startup. And currently, I'm the co-founder of Humanest. On the personal front, I'm a mother to two little boys. I'm also a fitness enthusiast and also a trained Kathak dancer. I'm very happy to be here and talking to you today, Nandini. And the other thing that you asked me was the one thing that I'm proud of for being a woman. And there's so many things that come to mind, but if I just had to pick just one and only one thing, I would pick emotional resilience. And that is the quality that all women possess. We go through the toughest of circumstances and we bounce back. And it doesn't matter who it is, what kind of socioeconomic status, what kind of circumstances the woman is in. We know how to bounce back. We are emotionally resilient. And that's the one thing that I'm proud of for being a woman.
Wonderful. Tell us any discrimination that you have faced because of your gender.
Oh, that's a big question, especially for someone who grew up in a South Asian culture. So technically, I was fortunate to be born in a family where there was no discrimination between genders, and I feel very blessed to be in that situation. However, being a woman was very deeply indoctrinated into me. And from the society, from my peer group, from the teachers, from the media, right? Like the whole thing was there to tell me that I am a woman and I am less in some way and I am different in some way. And I'll give you some examples. It started at a very early age with these TV campaigns that we used to watch on Doordarshan, the social awareness, Beti Bachao, Beta Beti Ek Hai. And why? Like, I used to always think that why are they different? Why do we have to tell people that we are the same? We are the same, so that was the indoctrination that started. And there were times, and because of that, my brain got primed, and there were times when I used to accuse my mother of saying, why are you scolding me? Why don't you scold my brother? Because he's a boy. And although that was not the case, you see how these little messaging, like it starts at such an early age. And then things started happening from the social front. It was like, why are you, when my relatives used to say, you have to cry quietly because you're a girl, or they used to tell my brother, why are you crying like a girl? So that started happening. Then teenage happened, and teenage was like Eve teasing, getting conscious about what to wear, when to go, where to go, who to go with. And then the curfews that my friends used to talk about to get home before dark. Then there was the coaching classes that I joined before engineering. And there was a joke, but not a joke, that girls were good in chemistry, boys were good in physics. And because of that, there were extra classes in the evening for girls for physics support, but no extra classes for boys for chemistry. So that used to happen. And then, of course, as a young engineering student, we used to have this class called workshop, where we used to work with tools. And the workshop teacher used to say that give the tools to the boys in your group, you guys go to music class. Like they used to just joke around like that. So the list does not end. And here I am today, a mother to two boys. And the expectation is that I am the primary caregiver for the children, and I am responsible for everything that happens. But if I think a little bit deeply about it, this is so normative in our culture that this is not even discrimination. It's like, this is how the world is. This is normative, although which is so mind-boggling to me. So this is, again, now you can call some of this discrimination, some of this like normative, but whatever is happening is uncomfortable to say the least right now.
Are you happy seeing women's status in today's society? And if not, then what kind of changes do you want to see and how to bring that changes?
So, I'll be very honest here. I think the progress has been made in terms of the woman's status in society, but at a very superficial level. So there'll be media reporting, there'll be stats and numbers. Oh, these many women joined the economy, or these many women are coming forth, and there's equality drive everywhere. So I would call it superficial progress. It's there, but like my previous answer that talked about, the discrimination, like it's so deeply embedded that that's what forms a social fabric of the society, and it will actually take many lifetimes for real change to come. That's my opinion. The time today will not be enough. If I start to count all the changes needed, we can go on and on for one lifetime at the very least. But I want to highlight one change that I feel deeply about, and especially because I've been living in that world for the last 10 years, is the attention to women's mental health needs. Now, both in the formal and the informal healthcare system, traditionally, physical health takes precedence over mental health, because women are expected to be strong. They have to do stuff. They have to be primary caregivers. So it doesn't matter what the struggle is going in their minds. They have to level up. I'll start with a few examples, and some of the people here might think of more such examples as I bring these forward. Growing up in my neighborhood, there was one of our neighbors who people had started calling Pugly, which means mad, after she gave birth to her child. And this was clearly postpartum depression, but there was no diagnosis, no support. She just stayed Pugly for the whole neighborhood. Another one, over 20 years ago, my aunt lost her son when he was 17. And she was expected to immediately step up and take care of the younger son right there. And there was zero mental health support. Today, she is a patient of chronic depression. And many of my friends actually went through relationship-related abuse. And some received family support, some did not. But the one kind of support across the board they did not receive was mental health support. Now, fast forward, looking back past 2 years, we all have been through a very strange, difficult COVID time. And because of that, this is no secret that mental illness is going to be the next big epidemic after COVID. But how much are we talking about women's mental health, being primary caregivers, having lost jobs, having lost their peace of mind? They have been stressed. Many of us have lost our sanity with children at home, caring for everyone, parents at home, primary caregivers, being responsible for the household. And it's not just that. If you zoom out, the big picture says that this is going to trickle down to the economy in so many ways, which means starting from reduction in employable workforce to children who will miss the carefree, loving time that their mothers are unable to give them. All that support system, I don't see that building up yet. I started by saying that the one thing that I'm very proud of for being a woman is emotional resilience, and that we are. And maybe that makes me think that maybe that's why the world is still running as it should be. But there's a limit to everything. Even the strongest of the elastics or bands stretch and snap. So are we at this threshold of the resilience? How long can we go with this? So that brings me to the changes. What changes do I see in this regard? The first thing is charity begins at home. Look at it. Look at our families. Let's look at our families. Let's recognize the need for support. Compassion scales and women empowerment can really start with us right after this podcast. So please keep in touch with your friends and let's empower each other, being the women, especially in this Women's History Month.
Thank you, Trisha. Srividya, now it's your turn. Tell us about yourself and what is the one thing that you are proud of for being a woman?
Hi, Nandini. Thanks so much for having me here today. My name is Srividya Prakash. I have been a long-time resident of the Bay Area since 2000. Originally from Mumbai and Pune in India. Have a family of two dogs, two wonderful dogs, two teenagers who are growing up too fast, and a wonderful husband. I currently serve as the CEO of Antara International. It is a US nonprofit that supports maternal and child health programs in rural India. My prior background is in management consulting and renewable energy. I have been a long time Maitri supporter, almost 10 years now. Initially as a volunteer at our galas. In fact, I remember doing those Costco runs so well and also helping out with a lot of back office stuff. Then went on to become a trained domestic violence counselor, a crisis helpline volunteer, and in more recent times, been an advocate and helping with our work in economic empowerment. And just love the organization for everything it stands for and does. You asked me what is the one thing that I'm proud of for being a woman. Well, Nandini, it might not always have felt this way, but taking on so many roles and learning to juggle them, I would say that's the one thing I'm proud of. Although, to be honest, that pride only comes in retrospect. In the middle of it all, this is very hard, very frustrating. There are constant trade-offs, this pause, restart, reinvent cycle. But when all is said and done and one can look back, I think taking on so many different roles has made for a very layered, interesting, and multidimensional life.
Tell us any discrimination that you have faced because of your gender.
So that's an interesting question. And I think I should say at the outset, I've had a really blessed, privileged life where my gender or any discrimination that could come with it were not really apparent in my early years. Growing up, both my parents were educated professionals. They themselves believed that a quality education is the best start that they could give their kids in life. In fact, my brother might have even felt that his sisters got the preferential treatment at times. I went to an all-girls school where expectations were high and opportunities were aplenty. College was no different. In fact, in Maharashtra, both school and college were almost free because of government policies that were supporting girls. Even at business school and my first job in consulting, these were very meritocratic places. They were hard driving, no doubt, but gender was not a factor. And after marriage, my in-laws have always been the most incredible supportive family. So all in all, when I look back, it's a very privileged life. I'm very grateful for that. In this aspect, though, I consider myself very lucky because so much of how we view ourselves is influenced by the expectations of our family and friends early on. If those same early expectations had been about, say, dependence or just doing enough to be suitable for marriage, then the narrative might be very different. And so I feel grateful that I grew up in an atmosphere where my gender really did not determine much of what I became. Growing up, of course, we all had to have the talk about being careful, avoid the unsafe paces. We've all been harassed in trains and buses. We've all casually joked about how few women we have at school and workplaces. But I can't remember ever explicitly using the word discrimination. So the first time that I was acutely aware of my gender and being unable to cope with it was when I was trying to juggle my career with the needs of bringing a child into this world and the pressures of raising a family in the US. And during my subsequent career break, I became more and more aware of the many ways in which women start to fall behind. So today in the US, young women are more likely to be enrolled in college. More young women than men are likely to complete college and have a 4-year degree. But you fast forward that 10, 20 years and you see the labor workforce participation that is down, wage parity is down, the so-called mommy tracks become more common, The percentage of women in senior executive positions and the C-suite is much lower. And all of this starts then having that impact on careers, whether they can start businesses, develop networks, have influence on the organizations they are in. And this then begins to really hurt, personal wealth accumulation or the sense of financial independence you might have. It begins to hurt your mental health and family relationships. Now, in one way, you might say, this is not really overt discrimination. This is just society's inability to be designed for families and to transcend gender roles, outdated gender roles. However, it is precisely this casual, oh, what can we do about it, shrugging of the shoulders that makes it that much harder to call this discrimination. And that's kind of what it is. Looking back, I feel would be the most explicit form that I could call out.
Are you happy seeing women's status in today's society? And if not, what kind of changes do you want to see and how to bring that change?
That's a hard question, Nandini. Women's status in today's society can be seen as a glass half full and a glass half empty type of situation. So for every example of progress, there will be another example that will show the complete opposite or how little has changed. So of course, I am happy to see the many changes in society today. In fact, as I was thinking about this question, I remember this book called Factfulness by Hans Rosling and Anand Ola Rosling. There is a quiz right at the outset of that book that tests our perceptions on improvements that have been made in various social fields. So one of the questions they ask is, what percentage of girls in low-income countries finish primary school today? And they found that people systematically underestimate the gains that the world has made. So there is a lot to be said about celebrating the gains that the world has made and feeling good about it, right? But at the same time, and this is the glass half empty part, what I do realize is that events like the COVID pandemic or war or politics, they keep showing us exactly how tenuous these gains are. Let's take COVID, for example. It has disproportionately impacted women's jobs, unpaid work, school dropout for girls, domestic violence. Likewise, we are seeing so many of the gains that we've made in reproductive health and rights being reversed by governments and judiciary. So on balance, of course, I'm happy with where we are, but I must say I'm forever grateful that we are living off the fruits of the previous generation's fights. And I don't think we should be taking any of this progress for granted. Coming then to the changes I would like to see, from an advocacy and research standpoint, what I would love to see is more and more research, kind of a spotlight on what is the life cycle impact of all these policies and practices that prevent women from being full, equal participants in society. So for example, I think it will be a real eye-opener if one could take all the layers of, starting with, say, the low health status of young mothers, to the impact then on female children, then malnutrition, education, period poverty, school dropouts, unpaid household chores, unpaid caregiving, early age of marriage, sexual violence, domestic violence, few opportunities to earn your livelihood, or say few opportunities for banking or access to finance. You take all of this and then you repeat it over generations. I think if we could somehow figure out that research and see what is the impact of that on women, it will be an eye-opener to see that half of our society today actually faces that kind of economic impact from all these different policies. So that's the one. From an advocacy standpoint, I think it would be very helpful to shine a spotlight on the cumulative impact of all of this. The second thing I would love to see is somehow a way to bring men and boys more actively into this conversation. Start considering them as, part of the solution space, not a part of the problem. This is not a women's issue. I mean, the last thing we want to do is to help all our daughters catapult into the 21st century, and then we leave our boys behind in the 18th century. right? So, role models, having conversations early on, the atmosphere of mutual respect, emphasis on prevention work, healthy relationships. I mean, there is so much that could bring boys into the solution space from early on. And then when the emphasis is on prevention versus fixing the problem later on, its resources better spent. The third thing that I would love to see is for the discussion on women's rights to be more of a human rights discussion. What continues to bother me is when we talk about justifying the need for women-friendly policies because she's a mother or a wife, or it impacts, the economic potential of society. Frankly, there is no other reason to fight for women's rights other than the fact that they are human rights. And I would love to see the conversation acknowledge that you don't need any further justification for why this is the right thing to do. And there's a quote that I always keep coming back to in this context. I'm going to probably wrap up with that. It's attributed to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but before her, it was actually Sarah Grimke's words. And she said, "For I ask no favors for my sex. I surrender not our claim to equality. All I ask of our brethren is that they will take their feet from our necks and permit us to stand upright." I could not say it better. And that is, frankly, what I would hope for in a society.
Thank you, Srividya. Now, last but not the least, Mariam Ali. Tell us about yourself and what is the one thing that you are proud of for being a woman?
So, hi Nandini, my name is Mariam Ali. To give a little bit of my introduction, I'm a Hyderabadi foodie. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist. And I work for the Santa Clara School District as a counseling associate. And I work at 3 different elementary schools. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm going to be an empty nester in the upcoming months. So kind of weighing the pros and cons of that. Having time for myself would be a great thing. And I volunteer for Sabha and also for Maitri. So I do find volunteering at both places very fulfilling. And I try my best to stay in the present moment, which is not easy at all times. But so that's me. I think what I'm proud of most as a woman would be emotional strength that a woman has. This might not have been as prominent as it is now due to a few challenges that I had to face in the previous couple of years. And those years, dealing with whatever I had to, it made me realize the strength that I had, the strength that the women that I leaned on had, the people who supported me, all my friends and family. So that just gave me the idea that, asking for help, to rely on friends and family, that just made the challenges less fearful. So I feel the emotional strength that a woman has is a force to be reckoned with. And I just want to end this question with the quote that by Khalil Gibran, that out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls, and the most massive characters are seared by scars.
Tell us any discrimination that you have faced because of your gender.
So I feel that sexism is a very subtle form of discrimination. And as I try to think of it now, there might have been subtle instances of discrimination all through in India and in US. But I think I might have brushed them aside, not acknowledging them as such. Because again, it's a very subtle form of discrimination, which I find it hard to think of a concrete example of a personal experience. But then, being in an all-girls school and an all-girls college, and even now in the field of psychology, which is mostly dominated by women, I find this a little hard to think of and visualize.
Are you happy seeing women's status in today's society? If not, then what kind of changes do you want to see and how to bring that change?
So I feel that they're both pros and cons to the question. They are, on one hand, I do feel that Women seem to be speaking up for themselves. Women are standing up for their rights. They are seen in more diverse fields today, from science to computers to law. We see women's impact more in the political or the economic system. However, I feel that, so that's there on one hand, but on the other hand, I feel that somewhere, the basic rights of a woman, be it the hijab, right, that's the basic freedom to choose how they would want to be represented, or how they want to follow their religion, that has been challenged or revoked. And then all these, the rise in abuse, the rise in dowry cases, the rise in rape cases that you hear every day, that just makes me question as to where we are going. It's so it is challenging, and then we come to the question of how that can be stopped or changed. Mm-hmm. So I feel that by bringing awareness among the younger generation is a good place to start. And as in psychology, they say that there's an identified patient, but you don't just treat the identified patient, you treat the whole family unit, you treat the whole community around them. So similarly, I feel that if we start at a smaller level of educating the youth and bringing awareness of abuse and women's rights and whatever there's to the issues that we feel strongly about and the ones that need to be addressed, they might start at a small level, but I feel that once the youth is connected, they are the ones who will then carry the message forward, and that would then spread into different levels of society, which it needs to. So starting with the youth and then carrying it out at different levels in schools, having awareness, or having people go about in schools and universities and even workplaces to talk about these issues that women face, I think is important.
Thank you all for sharing your thoughts with us. I also agree with all of you that we are seeing an advancement in women's status, but still we have a long way to go. Women are running countries, going to space, contributing a fair share in arts, science, and business. But at the same time, we are seeing many women are being held back by their traditions from using their full potential. Women do more invisible work than men do, and it is a fact. In most homes, women always get initiative to get chores done, groceries, cooking, babysitting, taking leaves to take care of sick children or elderly parents, taking pets to doctors, attending birthday parties, and the list goes on. We do double duties, double shifts with balancing our careers, childcare, and household duties. A lot of mental load on women's mind to do invisible work with no rewards. And in workforce, we are still facing wage gap, discrimination, and harassment. In many parts of the world, still many girl children are being aborted and not getting same opportunities as their brothers. We are facing child marriage, rape in time of political insurgencies, war, acid attack, dowry death, and honor killing. But it is possible to identify and break structural and ideological obstacles to gender equality. And if we all try, then we can create a cultural and societal condition, a society where gender equity is a norm. With that hope, I'm ending this episode today, but not the discussion. I hope you will continue the discussion. Thank you for listening to our podcast, Between Friends, Conversations with Maitri. Please find all our episodes on SoundCloud and other podcast apps. Please like and share our podcast and help us to reach to your network. Together, we can create a just society where all genders are seen, heard, and valued. Thank you. This project was made possible by funding provided by Santa Clara County Office of Gender-Based Violence Prevention.
This show is for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as legal advice. Always consult an attorney for legal advice. Views expressed by guests of the radio show are individual opinions and not endorsed by Maitri.